So as a Buddhist, I kind of got a lesson in impermanence and the ever-changing nature of reality. When I woke up this morning, I wanted to print this speech, and 12-point font wasn't enough, so I had to print it off at 20-point font, and I was just... and I'm not even sure that's enough right now. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be with you here today to talk a little bit about clinical pastoral education, or CPE. I come to you today, as you've heard, as a religious naturalist, but both with a background in Christianity and Buddhism. Now, if you're wondering what it means to be a Buddhist, Christian, religious naturalist, don't worry, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But what I am sure of is my spiritual foundation stresses the importance of interdependent connections, relationality, and that the past relational experiences we have are intimately connected to the present. Much of this foundation will inform and frame my talk today, or my reflection with you. For those of you just learning about CPE or discerning whether or not to take a unit of CPE, know that it's more than a requirement. It's more than a box to check off on your path to graduation, ordination, or a future career in chaplaincy. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to grow, not only as future chaplains or some other spiritual care provider, but as a human being, learning to be in relationship with other human beings. For me, and I heard this echoed from some other people in the room during lunch, CPE was one of the most important formative experiences of my life. Chaplaincy asks us to engage deeply with the suffering and the joys that make up the lives of others. But, and this is an important but, the CPE process also expects us to engage with our own lives. Earlier, we heard a piece from the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and that was beautifully read, by the way. Thich Nhat Hanh reflected on the day his mother died. He described feeling at first that he had lost something essential, that a part of him had disappeared. But over time, he came to another understanding, that his mother was still with him, still influencing the way he saw things. She was in the moonlight, in his footsteps, in the breeze. She was wherever he looked. He realized that she was not truly gone, that their relationship continued, and that his relationship with her informed the way he viewed and interacted with the world and those around him. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, my spiritual views recognize that people, the world, and reality itself are part of a complex and interconnected web of relatedness. One of my favorite Buddhist stories is the narrative of Siddhartha Gautama and his awakening under the Bodhi tree. The story tells of on the evening of Siddhartha's awakening, he attained the ability to recall a vast number of his previous lives and how all those lives led to that one extraordinary moment. Thus, Siddhartha became the awakened one, the Buddha. I like this story. I like it a lot. Many writers have stressed how Siddhartha was awakened in the sense that he was no longer asleep to the fundamental processes of reality, like the nature of suffering, impermanence, and interdependence. But I find this story particularly meaningful in the context of CPE, in that it reveals how the Buddha became awakened to himself only after reflecting on his past, and how all of his past relationships and his past actions explained his present. The story resonates true with my own lived experience. The more I've explored my own past, my own relationships, the more I've come to know myself and how I interact with others. The past has explanatory power. The realization that our relationships are not lost to us, but remain a part of us, shaping us, informing us, is one of the greatest truths of chaplaincy. The people we love, as well as the people we dislike for whatever reason. The people that have influenced us, the people who we've lost, the people that have hurt us. All of them, for better or for worse, they all become part of who we are, and thus who we are as caregivers. And this truth goes beyond just our personal relationships. It extends to all relationships we build with others. In the context of hospital chaplaincy, that would include patients, their families, the hospital staff. Your experience with others matter, as will your future experiences. Each interaction you have as a chaplain will change you. And in turn, those changes will affect the way you care for others. To talk about relationships and chaplaincy for any extended period of time is to eventually discuss the topic of loss. And by extension, feelings of sorrow. Exploring one's understanding of sorrow and the application of that tends to be one of the more difficult topics in the CPE process. Mary Oliver, in her poem, The Uses of Sorrow, offers a touching reflection on this. She writes, quote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." See my two students in the front row, and I can't tell you how many times they've heard me say that they're the gifts. And their patients are the gifts. The families they interact with are the gifts. In chaplaincy, you will encounter countless boxes full of darkness. The grief of a family, the despair of a patient, the weariness of the medical staff. But over time, CPE will teach you that these encounters, difficult as they are, hold within them gifts. The gift of learning to sit with someone in their pain. The gift of realizing you don't have to have all the answers. And perhaps most importantly, the gift of understanding that your presence, simple as it may seem, can and does make a difference. When I began CPE, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what it meant to provide spiritual care. You can talk to Imani about this. I thought I was smart enough. I had multiple degrees in religion. And I do mean multiple. I was sensitive enough. But the process of CPE has a way of showing you just how much more there is to learn. And it does this not simply through lectures or readings, but to be sure you will get those too, but through direct patient care experiences. Experiences that touch you. Especially those experiences that intersect with your past. CPE and its experiential model of learning challenges you to step into moments where the answer, if there are any, are elusive. Where sometimes you're not sure of the right words or actions, or similar to the words from Cole Arthur Riley that was recited in today's call to centering, you don't know what your path is. And that's okay. I believe CPE teaches you that not knowing the path or where the path leads is part of the path itself. And perhaps in that not knowing, in that uncertainty, you discover a kind of freedom. Early in my CPE journey, I had visited a young woman in her early 30s. She had just undergone a colostomy, an operation that involves creating an opening in one's abdominal wall, and then thereby allowing digestive waste to be redirected into an opening and expelled in an external bag attached to the body. She was devastated, and she didn't know how she could possibly live with this new reality. She had called chaplain services out of desperation. Shortly after I arrived, she stated that she was not a religious person, but she didn't know what to do. Well, that made two of us, because I definitely had no idea what to do. Images of my grandmother in the hospital came to me. I felt helpless then, and I was feeling helpless at that moment with that woman. I could not fix what had happened to her. What words could I possibly offer to alleviate this woman's pain and suffering? I wanted to run just like I ran out of my grandmother's hospital room. I got lucky that day because of the patient's mother, who was sitting over in the corner of the room. With the best of intentions and operating out of her own anxiousness and helplessness, she said to me, "We called so you might help cheer her up." Right? Imagine what was going through my head. And again, I recall my grandmother and her frustration and all the time she cried out to be listened to in response to all the well-meaning family trying desperately to make her feel better when she had every justification for her feelings of fear and sadness. And with that recollection of my grandmother, I was able to take a deep breath and turn my attention to the business of listening and responded to what she needed, not what I needed, not would alleviate my own anxiety. I was able to truly sit with her instead of running away. My grandmother taught me that. I have a Pentecostal background too, so if y'all give me an amen, that's completely okay. In the end, I didn't say much that day, but I didn't have to. And here's another important lesson I learned. You don't always need to speak. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is offer your presence. CPE will teach you the value of silence, of holding space for the unspoken, the uncertainty and the unknown, the terrifying. The capacity to sit with uncertainty, it will teach you that you're not there to fix. You're not there to heal, and you're not there to save. You're there to witness and accompany and offer your heart in an open and non-judgmental way. But this openness, this ability to be fully present with others, or your inability to do so, has its origin in your relationships. Your own experiences of love, loss, life. Thich Nhat Hanh's understanding that his mother lived on in him is a powerful reminder that we are not separate from our experiences. Every person you meet, every patient you comfort, every doctor and nurse you support, they will stay with you in one way or another. And they will shape you in how you continue to offer care in the future. This process can be incredibly humbling, very humbling. Chances are, if you take this route, you're going to make mistakes. You will walk out of a patient's room feeling like you completely messed up. You will feel awkward, uncertain, maybe even like a failure. This too is part of the journey. One of the strengths of CPE is that it gives you a framework to explore and understand these moments. Through your reflections, group discussions, and feedback from your educator and your peers, you'll begin to see places where your own emotional landscape gets in the way of caring for another. But instead of shying away from that, CPE will encourage you to explore those experiences and how they are informing and impacting the care you provide. It's about learning to be honest with yourself, not only your gifts, because you do have those, but being honest about your limitations, your biases, and your assumptions. So far, I've focused quite a bit on presence and awareness of oneself in order not to get carried away with trying to fix it. But let me be clear. There is more to chaplaincy and CPE than learning to be a supportive presence. CPE also teaches how to challenge, how to hold others, including ourselves, accountable, how to acknowledge and confront systemic issues that impact the lives of those we serve. Whether it's disparities in healthcare, racial injustices, something not separate from disparities in healthcare, or other forms of inequality, the CPE process expects a willingness on the part of students to explore and confront these realities and the biases that shape them. But, and this is another one of those important buts, such justice work begins with oneself. It begins by having the courage to explore your own history, your relationships, your own familial context, your own cultural context, and your own biases and your own assumptions and the role they play. CPE teaches, or at least it tries to teach, emotional maturity. The process stressing the importance of learning to sit with your discomfort, to acknowledge your own emotions without letting them take you over. Drawing upon your own spiritual foundations, you'll learn how to stay grounded in moments of chaos, to offer calm in the storm, not by avoiding your feelings, but by acknowledging them and striving to better understand them. And as you do this, you'll realize that this emotional maturity, it's not only important for the patients and those you serve, it's for you too. You'll find that this work, it'll shape you and how you interact with the world far beyond the walls of any hospital. And there's even more to it than that. You'll navigate the sacred and the mundane, sometimes in the same visit. And some of you may come to realize that this dichotomy between the sacred and mundane is false. You'll be called to offer prayer or a blessing or to sit quietly when someone cries. But you might also be called to listen to someone share just how much they miss working in their garden. Or someone who is very anxious because they cannot find someone to care for their beloved dog. You'll also be called to provide support to the hospital staff who face their own emotional and spiritual fatigue. In fact, you might find it surprising just how much doctors and nurses are the ones in need of our care and support. These people who see trauma and death on a regular basis, they are working grueling hours, terrible hours, often with little time to process the emotions that come with that. You'll be there for them too. And sometimes being there for them means offering a moment of lightness, a moment of humor, a break from the heaviness. CPE is serious work, yeah, but we expect you to bring your whole self into it, and that includes your lightness, your humor, and your joy. Chaplaincy, after all, is not just about holding space for pain, it's also about celebrating life wherever you find it. And so remember Thich Nhat Hanh's words, and remember Mary Oliver's boxes full of darkness. For those that choose this route, there will be times when the work feels like a burden. But hopefully with time, you'll discover that even the most difficult moments may carry their own gifts. That might help you learn more about yourself and others. Perhaps you'll learn how to stand amid suffering without being overwhelmed by it, or being driven by the need to change what is. And in that, there lies a freedom. for you to be yourself and see the person sitting across from you. You may find that you're more capable, or you're capable of far more than you've imagined. And in the world, especially the world of the hospital, it will be a better place because of your presence in it. So I invite you to join me. Thank you.